Hey guys, welcome back to the YouTube show. We are here in this lodge mansion. It's over 10,000 square feet on 3 levels. I'm gonna walk you guys around, let you take a little look. This is up in the Muskokas. Beautiful 45-foot ceilings. If you guys can see, like the stairs are made out of trees. Like this is my hand, and that's the size of the beams. There are, you can't see them because they're like 50 feet up, but legitimately like tree trunks. Check this out, tree trunks. Like literally, I can't even hug this thing. It's so big. Ooh. Pretty sick. Yeah, so I'll do a little tour, walk you guys around. You guys can jump any questions about real estate, about Airbnb, about flipping, about whatever you want to see. And let's see if I can give you a little tour. Ooh, 12-foot doors. Check it outside. Can't really see as well, but you can see up there. That's sick. It's like a 30-foot vestibule when you walk up. Just unreal. These are real tree trunks. Each one of these has been hand scribed. They're not chinked, so they had to hand scribe each one of these logs to go around the whole exterior of the property. Pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. 2-story vault in the kitchen. Just unreal. A little cigar room in here. Little whiskey room. Look at those chandeliers. Look at that. That fan is 12 feet across. Just unreal. We'll go up there in a bit. And there's a 3-way walkout, so down below, I think it's got like 12 beds. Probably not gonna get through it all today, but throw your questions down below. Happy to hear whatever questions you have in the new year. I guess I haven't said hello and Happy New Year. Happy New Year, everyone. Hope everyone's having a great start to the year. This year's gonna be a really great year. 2024 is a fantastic, we're in the master suite now, so we kind of got some French doors here. Can't really see where I'm walking around, but it's got his and hers entrances. There's a California King. Look at that, just super cool. All of these had to be hand scribed and brought in. I count about 400 trees to build this mansion, so pretty crazy. And it's for sale for 3.9 million, I think you get it for, which is for 10,000 square feet in Muskokas. Pretty unreal, actually. Value's pretty good. We're here doing a little corporate retreat, getting all the guys together, all the people in my crew. I had some contractors and family members and stuff like that coming together. And we were just celebrating all the hard work for 2023 and all the successes we've had. And so we came together here and we do a little corporate retreat. And so I just happened to be here and it's Wednesday. And so, you know, another video, another chance to share with you guys what's been going on in my life. Bring you guys along for the journey. Life is good. I cannot complain right now. I've been living it up like a king for the last week in 2 different mansion lodges. This one's actually quite a bit larger. Look at these. Like these are carved out of trees. Each stair. If you can appreciate the architecture that went into this place, just unreal. Like this is like a coliseum. I wish I could show you guys how high this is. Like that door there is 8 feet. So you're like, got legitimately like trees for supports, which is super, super cool. These would have been like California red, probably something huge like that from BC or from California. Just unreal. The camera doesn't even do it justice. Like you see it on camera and I watch it, I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like it looks cool. But when you're physically in the presence of like 30 and 40-foot ceilings, unreal, unreal. I appreciate architecture. I love real estate, and it's been a great opportunity to be here and bring in the new year and Christmas with some great people. Keep dropping your questions down below. I'm gonna answer all of the questions. Got a couple of bedrooms here, a couple master king bedrooms. All of them have en-suites. I really like the tile choices. I love that these tiles have a really cool texture. The hard part about this is getting these to line up is actually much more difficult than it appears. So a lot of craftsmanship went into this bad boy. Of course, there are deficiencies that my trained eye can't help but notice. Some design choices maybe I wouldn't have made, but really some great choices still nonetheless. Another king suite over here. Bum, bum, bum. Do 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 do. Just unreal. And the biggest level is the main level. I'll go down and show you. It's a walkout at the back. So it's kind of like a basement, but it's got like 4 or 5 walkout entrances. And then like this lodge is huge. I'll show you guys a picture. Getting a nice snowfall here. Just unreal out here. Big canopy where the cars drive under. Probably lose Wi-Fi. If you guys can't hear me, I'm probably on cell data now at this point because the lodge is too big to actually get Wi-Fi everywhere you need the extenders. It's a whole other foot below. It's on a lake, beautiful lake. Like, look how unreal this is. I'm still just walking around it. Just goes on for days. It's like 10 balconies. Oh, of course I'm locked out. Back around. Wonder if this one's open. Ah, this one's locked too. Darn it. Didn't think that through, did we? Run! Woo! Woo! Brr! All right, come back in. It's about -5 outside. -5 Celsius. Hey, sweetie. He does the same thing this way and wraps all the way around the whole place. And then does 3 levels of walkout. Just a sweet little spot. Here's someone looking for me. These rooms are huge. Anyway, they're all walkouts too, so you just walk right out down to the lake down below. There's more wings down here. Billiards room. More suites. Just an unreal spot. Super cool. All right, well, let's do the Q&A. I think there's been enough time for you guys to figure the Q&A. Oh, in the hallway is another little bedroom over here. A little laundry room there. A little family room here. Another bathrooms over here. I think I've toured most of it here. Whoa, we're slipping and sliding. All right. I'm gonna find a quiet spot, hopefully with some Wi-Fi. Close the French doors. Maybe try this room over here. You guys hear me? Is it coming in okay? Is the rural Wi-Fi or rural cell reception coming in okay? Can you hear me? Let's go to the Q&A for a sec. Yo, Chong, good to see you on. David, how you doing from Alberta? Mason says, hey, Mike, message on Instagram. Wondering where you got floors for your flip. Which flip? We got like a dozen. I posted today about one of the flips up in Petawawa that my partner up there is doing. And to be honest with you, my level of involvement in that flip was strictly money partner. So I provide high-level strategic advice. I help with the sale. I help with stuff like that. But I really was not involved with the operations on that one at all. Typically, I am involved more so if it's a local flip. In this case, I'm trying to remember. I want to say it's LVP, luxury vinyl plank, just from looking at the pictures. But my guess is we just got it on sale from somewhere, probably 20, 30% off. I have scored deals before where we took in flooring from like Miami on a skid for like $1 a square, and it's regular $3 a square. In this case, I don't think that was the case with that one, but that was a good flip. We picked it up a couple $100,000, selling it for like almost 500. So there's a good 6-figure margin. You do 10, I always say like you can do 12, if you can build a good business up where you've got, a decent amount of staff, you get like a small team of like, 4 to 6 contractors, yourself, hunting deals, 1 deal a month is totally doable for a small little flipping operation. And if you do 100,000 a deal, that's 100,000 a month. If you do 12 a year, that's 1.2 million a year in profit. So flipping like $1.2 million a year flipping business is totally achievable for most people. The hard part is scaling past that. It's where most people struggle. So I've lived in that 12 to 24 flips a year space. Now all my flips are designed to be long-term holds. So if I have to hold any of my properties, they all can cash flow. I try not to do any flips that I can't hold, that can't long-term cash flow. So my advice for you guys, if you're getting into that business, buy like a duplex that you can add a third unit to. That's really cheap in a decent area of town where you can get great cash flow, and you're buying it for the cash flow. And so you end up in a situation where you're like almost guaranteed. This room's actually massive. I'm looking at it. These are king beds. Jeez. This is just like a little small room, this place. But yeah, so if you're trying to flip, that's what I would say you should do is focus in on stuff that cash flows really well. Another reason I like multifamily flips is because like I've always tried to flip duplex. I do the occasional single family and people will bring them to me. That one in Petawawa was an example of like a previous mentee of mine and partner. He reached out and he was, wanting to partner up, and like people who I've worked with before, I continue to work with, especially like someone who's a great operator like he is. I have no problem funding his deals. But yeah, the ones that I'm trying to focus on now are larger multifamily stuff. I like to buy like a 10 or 20 unit because you can do 1 unit at a time, and the whole time your carry cost is 0. You buy a single family at these rates right now, your burn on like a $500,000 single family is like $5,000 a month plus property taxes, utilities, insurance. You're looking at $6,000-7,000 a month burn. If you have no rent coming in, you're losing money every month. But you buy a $500,000 fourplex. That fourplex is probably renting for $1,500 a unit. You're bringing $6,000 a month in rent. Now on a flip, you might take a 12% mortgage, so you're gonna have a percent a month, which is like, again, $5,000 a month in payments, interest only. So that, if you're in a short-term product like that, it's not a long-term mortgage product, you'll probably be losing a little bit of money, but at least bringing $6,000 a month in rent, you're probably almost breaking even. And so if that flip takes you gotta evict the tenant, whatever, turn all the units over, it always takes longer than you think it will. My fastest flips are 30 to 60 days. Sometimes flips go for a whole year. You get the city involved with permits and engineers. It can take longer than a year. So that's just the reality of the flipping business. And I would say that if you have the, nice number of units, you can easily sustain for, as long as you need because your burn rate's so low. Whereas a single family flip, you've got to factor in like 10 months of runway, because if you get the flip done in 30 to 60 days, it hits the market. In a slow market, it might take a month to sell. They'll do a 3-month closing. Buyer might back out. Something might happen. From the time you buy it to the time you sell it, it's usually 4 to 6 months. It can be even longer in a recession. And so if your burn rate is $5,000 a month, 6 months of that is 30, 40 grand. That might be the size of your entire renovation. It just goes to carrying cost. So it's something to think about. In a large multifamily situation, your carry cost is 0. And if things don't go well, you can just hold the property, refinance it at a lower rate, and then you're cash flow positive, you're all good. So I'd like to buy stuff that definitely fits that metric. All right, next question. Bum, bum, bum. Reminds me of Lincoln Logs. I'm gonna call as well. Do you have some strategies to minimize tax? Yeah, it's a new year, 2024. Usually the new year, and 24 is a very lucky number for me. I really have always liked that number. So for me, I'm really excited about 2024. I think a lot of really great things are gonna come together. Let's look at the stock market. So the stock market had a plus 54% year on the NASDAQ last year. One of the strongest years since the dot-com bubble. Had the largest consecutive win rate in terms of number of days the market continued to rally up, straight up, that I've seen in more than a decade, for sure. I don't know what the record is on that, probably a couple decades. I know we had the strongest year since the dot-com bubble in tech. So we're in the AI bubble right now. And so one of the challenges in this year is that we're way, way overbought. So there should be a bit of a pullback in the stock market. But I'm gonna shift my focus. These last couple of days, we've seen a bit of a peeling off of people taking profits. The NASDAQ's collapsed 3% in the first 2 trading days of this year, which is great because I have a short position, which I closed half of today, and I'll continue to close out the position. Looking forward to just focusing, for me, on the mortgage stuff, on funding deals, finding deals. Financing and deal flow are like the 2 things I love. The operations stuff, I'd like to outsource that. If I had a partner who loved to do that, I would just outsource that. So yeah, that's it's part of it though, right? Like for the last 12 years, I've had to slog in the trenches, grinding away, managing, fighting with trades, and like doing a good job at project management means you've got to grind your contractors. You got to fight with them on deficiencies. And like the role sucks. Like being a project manager, you've got to be a hard ass. You've got to walk behind your contractors who are babies, who don't want to do their deficiency work. You got to make them do it for free because they fucked up, take it off their pay, be that guy. And being that guy sucks. It's not a great job, but it is a good job when you're just getting started. You don't have a choice. A lot of people I talk to, like, a lot of flippers I talk to are like, I don't want to buy multifamily stuff because I don't want to deal with tenants in Ontario. I'm like, okay, like that's part of the business. You have to deal with the clogged toilets and the bullshit when you're just getting started. When you've built a big portfolio, you can have the luxury of doing private lending and stuff like that, but you're just getting started. You've got to put the work in. You've got to take on all those headaches and those problems. That's how you build wealth, right? You take on a lot of the problems. And as you elevate, you build wealth, your time becomes more valuable. It becomes too valuable to deal with the toilets and the clogs. So that's my advice is start small, scale up. If you find you love it, scale it. And then as you scale it, you don't have to do the stuff you don't want to do anymore. You can hire out and outsource. But you can't outsource from day one unless you want to have a huge risk of default. A lot of guys go down because they outsource too much and they don't have the margins. Randy says, hi, Mike. Happy New Year. What level of net worth income should one start to move assets to, say, Bermuda? 2 million net worth, only 200K a year income would probably not work, Randy says. Substitute Bermuda with, say, Cayman Islands or any other tax haven. Yeah, I don't know why. Bermuda's not ever been on my radar as a place from a tax perspective. I like the Bahamas. I think it's a great place. Dubai stands out. Singapore is one of the best places. One of my friends says it's fantastic, so I'll trust his word on that. There's a couple other tax havens that are pretty good. Cayman's, a challenge with the Cayman Islands is you got to live there for 6 months and a day, whereas Bahamas is 90 days a year. You have to vacation, buy a house there and call it your primary residence. But you have to be there like 91 days a year to maintain residency. So if you're a business entrepreneur like I am, you're traveling a lot, they'll accept you still if you spend 91 days a year there and you're not in any other country for 6 months or more. So, but to answer your question, when is the right time to start looking at tax planning? It's different for each person, right? Like you start looking at trusts and things like that when the cost of the tax burden is large enough to justify, or I guess the relief on the tax burden is large enough to justify paying all of these experts, because you'll spend tens of thousands setting up offshore trusts and things like that. I spent thousands and thousands of dollars setting all those structures up, and I'm still in the process of doing that. Now, like if you're making 100 grand a year, you can structure that in Ontario to pay almost no tax. Like you can bring in $50,000 a year per spouse in dividend income, completely tax-free from a Canadian eligible corporation. So it's like, and corporate tax under the first 500,000 you make per year is like 12.9% in Ontario. So if it's an active business. So a lot of business owners, they can get to like, I've seen guys in the low 8 figures where it still has made sense to kind of shelter things and work through the tax loopholes here within Canada and still keep their average tax rate 20% or something to that effect, even less sometimes, especially if they had a lot of assets that generated capital gains, because you can defer capital gains until you decide to sell, which is potentially huge because there's no tax at all until the sale event, which could be years and years down the line. And using things like universal life or whole life insurance, you can definitely, I'm gonna sit down here. You can definitely substitute a lot of the pain and hardship and put it into tax-free vehicles like those. Next question was, Mike, could you speak more about motel transformation strategies? Has anyone done it before? Any substantial paperwork rezoning, budget per unit? Yeah, so my understanding is that, and I do follow some people that do it, the rezoning piece is gray. So yes, you have to rezone it. If you want to go for like proper financing, you may have to rezone the property. It's possible the property already is zoned for multifamily as well. And so I have some spaghetti in my lips. Sorry about that, guys. A little dinner before I did my live stream. Didn't even notice. Okay, back to your question. I think it was about motels and apartment conversions. So yes, I follow some people who do it. Yes, there's challenges associated with it. One of the challenges is, again, rezoning could be an issue, could be not. It's property dependent. So sometimes you'll walk in and the municipality's like, we want more housing. We're totally happy with, I wish I didn't set up my tripod. I'm just holding my phone. So sorry for the shakiness of the camera. So to answer your question, it depends on the property. There's no like, you know, there are hotels that do extended stay, and so they all have kitchenettes. And so that's a play that I like. That's a pivot that I like, only because you can put someone in weekly or monthly in your hotel and have much better occupancy, especially in places that have, say, 40 or 50% occupancy. You can often go in and, you know, crank that up to 60 or 70%. And just by simply, you know, converting the clientele from, say, short-term vacationers to longer-term stays. Maybe if you're in Florida, that could be snowbirds, people who are coming there who want that apartment. And maybe the same amount of square footage can just be redesigned so that it goes from a studio apartment to a one-bedroom apartment. Put up a small wall and a door, and you rejig it so the kitchen and the living room are one sort of shared space. And the kitchen is not large. It could be one small, you know, space. Like as an example, in this room, got a bathroom here. One thing you could do, this isn't really a great space for it, but you do have plumbing along that wall. So if I was trying to turn this, let's say this is a hotel. This is actually almost like a hotel room because it has a separate entrance. Okay, let's do this as an example. So if this was a hotel room and I had a bathroom over here and whatever, I would take the plumbing in that wall and I'd stub over right here. It's probably a 2-inch, so it could handle two 1.5-inch lines. There's probably a stack actually in that wall, if my guess. But you could easily tie in the plumbing right here like that, and I put a kitchen along this back wall right here. A beautiful little kitchenette. You put a little stove cooktop, put a fridge in the corner over there, or vice versa, put the fridge here, little stove cooktop there. I would shrink these king beds to queens, probably shift them over, and I could probably still fit a little couch here. Probably get rid of this closet here, sink a couch into there. You could throw a TV, you could do the opposite, put a TV on this wall. Usually there's a TV. Oh, there's a TV over there, okay. Usually you have a TV in the space as well, but you can easily turn this little hotel room. This is just one bedroom in this lodge I'm in, but you can easily turn this into an apartment right there along that back wall. That'd be a perfect spot for your plumbing to tie in. You have your electrical there already. Be a great spot for it. And you could keep it as 2 king. You could shrink it to 2 queen. You could put a king bed here and put a big sectional couch here. You have your TV there still. Boom, now this becomes an apartment. So space-wise, totally doable to convert this space. And now this might rent for, say, if this is a hotel room, this would rent for like, in a city, it depends on the city and what time of year, right? Anywhere from like $50 a night to like $400 a night. But as an apartment, your bottom is probably $75 a night or $80 a night. And you get a lot more longer term stays. So where this might rent 20 days out of 30, with a kitchen in it, it might rent 25 days out of 30. You might have longer term stays. So your revenue would definitely increase. And to add that kitchen is probably, let's just say you just did the kitchen and changed the furnishing. That's maybe, I want to say maybe like maximum $4,000, right, to do. And the permit is literally is like, you already have electrical there. It's probably already serviced. If it isn't, you might have to run a dedicated line for your little mini fridge, but mini fridges don't pull a lot of amperage, so you're probably fine. But you might need to run power for so you might need a permit for your electrical. If you need to run a stovetop burner, you might have the amperage there, I don't know. And then your plumbing, which is like, again, a couple grand, cabinets, $1,000 or $2,000 in bulk order. So you can turn like a space like this into a full apartment. And now it goes from like, people can cook their own meals there. There's definitely a huge upside in doing that in spaces, right? So I'm a big fan of that. Micro apartments are fantastic. A lot of people, like if you have a bedroom in a house, if I were to rent this as a bedroom in a house, let's say it was a long-term student rental, whatever, I get $700 a month for a bedroom. For this with a kitchen in it, I'll get $1,400 a month. So the rent per square foot increases by 100%. You double your rent per square foot in an apartment building. So you go into the city and I put let's say that's already connected to the rest of the house. I put a fire drywall along this wall. I guess just this door. This is the door to get out of the place. I get rid of that door. I frame it in with metal studs. I put fireproof safe and sound insulation. I put fireproofing. This may already have it. If it doesn't, you throw some on the top of there. Sometimes you can get grandfathering retrofitting where they allow you to leave what's already here. But this is an example of like taking this same amount of square footage and you're able to double the amount of rent you can get out of it. So that can be epic when the zoning allows. And nice thing about these hotel conversions, some of them you go into like legal 50-unit apartment. If you throw kitchenettes in all the units, it's still an apartment hotel. And you tell them, you get a permit, and you open up, put a sink in there. I'm just putting a sink, a bar sink, wet bar sink in all my units. That's okay. You're not changing the unit materially. So oftentimes you can skate by with the existing zoning and crank the revenue up substantially. So that's the allure, I think, of putting in just in general, micro apartments are totally the new trend. People are going to be escaping into the AI universe, into the AI metaverse. All they need is a nice couch, nice bed to sleep on, nice place to go. They don't want a big space anymore. They can rent a storage unit if they need to for stuff. They don't, people are happy with less, especially with rents. Over the last 8 years, rent has doubled and income has not doubled. So the affordability is way out of whack. There's a lot of people who just need an apartment for $1,200 a month. They can't afford $1,700. And so they get a smaller apartment now. You can cater to that market of that segment that's like frugal, the student, the first time worker, people who just can't afford. There's just so much you can do. And like, honestly, in a place like this, if you really want to crank out revenue, you gotta, those are big French doors that walk out. So you have a separate entrance to the apartment. What you could do, what you should do, this is 11 feet wide. You have a 9x10 room, you have a huge room. Off this trim right here, you put a wall, you do an angle like this, you put the door on the angle, and you close it in. So now you got a great line of sight. You're sitting here, you can still see the door because the door's on the wall's on the angle line of sight. Now it's a 1-bedroom apartment. You have a big sectional couch on this new wall you just created right in between here. I can put a huge 8-person sectional couch. It faces the TV over here in the kitchen. Now you've got a huge living room. This living room is 20 by 15. And I have a big bedroom over here where I can stick a queen bed in there, right next to the door. Boom. That's a game changer. Now I just took the same square footage and now it's a 1-bedroom apartment. Big difference, right? So little changes in the same amount of square footage. As a real estate investor, our goal is to optimize what we have per square foot. Sometimes that means if you're in an area where you can build cheaply, that means adding square footage by building. If you're in an area where the price per square foot is not that high, a lot of smaller towns, not like that. It doesn't make sense. You work with what you've got. You optimize what you have. And a lot of what I do is go in and I find spaces that are just, they're optimized for what the previous owner had, but you can go in there and say, hey, there's a way to add 3 bedrooms here, and we can jack up the rent by $700 a bedroom. That's an extra $2,100 in rent. We took an unfinished basement, we added 3 bedrooms. Now the rent roll is double. So we're bringing in twice what the other landlord was bringing in. Are all landlords created equal? No. Because there was one guy who maybe owned the house for 20 years before you who rented it as a 3-bedroom house and kept the basement as a rec room. You go in, you take over, you spend $20,000 putting up 3 walls in the basement and maybe cut in some egress windows, and now you got a 6-bedroom house. The same square footage. He used it as a living room downstairs. It added no extra rent. You can make landlords are not created equal. Real estate investors are not created equal. Most of them suck. Most people are stupid. And I hate to say that. Most people are ignorant. They're lazy and ignorant. And so they don't want to go through the effort of renovating, or they don't want to, change how they do things. So that's been, for me, something that has been on my mind as of recent, is what separates a bad landlord from a good landlord? Because 90% of landlords aren't even cash flow positive unless they put a lot of cash down. And it's well, why don't people think this way? And it's just in business. When I'm in business, I look at the business world, and there's so many areas where there's low-hanging fruit to pick where people just don't optimize because a lot of business owners they've been doing something one way their entire life and they don't accept change. They don't adapt. And so it's just little things. I just turned this bedroom into a full 1-bedroom apartment. That's a 10 by 10 bedroom. On the angle wall, we have a huge sectional couch. That wall actually creates a nice wall to put a nice L-shaped sectional couch. That's huge, huge. Now we have a kitchen along that back wall. This same space that was a nice little hotel room, let's call it. It's just a bedroom in this mansion. But for the example's purposes, we were able to optimize this layout and create double the rent. That's where I can go into spaces and in one day, and by the way, when we increase the rent roll double, the property value also doubles. So it goes from being worth, say, the hotel's worth $1 million, it's now worth $1.5 million, $2 million, just because we made some strategic changes. And all that profit is where we live. We want to live in the profit zone. So next question was, do you think Airbnb will be banned in cottage country with all these restrictions they're getting into the city? David, yes. I think the CRA, the Canada Revenue Agency, in general, hates Airbnb. The Liberal government is very much against Airbnb. They've gone as far as saying they're not going to allow owners of Airbnb. Sorry, this pillow was inflating all the air out of it. Could you hear that? It was tss. The CRA has come out and said that they do not want Airbnb. They're coming after cottage owners. They're saying if you rent your property on Airbnb, that it's subject now to, on the sale, HST of 13%. So if you bought a cottage for $1 million and you rent it on Airbnb for 2 years and you go to sell it, you got to pay $130,000 in HST, and the buyer is never going to pay that. So the seller, you who just bought the cottage, has to pay $130,000. It's effectively taking your property from being worth $1 million to being worth $870,000. So the CRA is coming out and destroying property value and putting a new tax of $130,000 per million
on every cottage owner who does Airbnb. And they're saying, hey, you're collecting HST on the bookings. It's a commercial property. We're rezoning this property commercial. Not only is your property tax going to double, but if you go and try to sell that property to a residential buyer, they're fucked for their mortgage. And when the buyer buys that property from you, they have to pay 13% HST. Normally, residential property is exempt from HST because there's no HST on rent. Residential rent is HST exempt. Commercial rent has HST. They're saying, hey, Airbnb is commercial. There's HST on the revenue you collect. Therefore, on this asset you're using to generate this income is now HST eligible instead of being exempt. So it destroys Airbnb operated properties in Ontario. It does not work. The only way that I can think around it is the Airbnb re-rental strategy. You do not want to own any Airbnbs in Ontario, period, unless it's your primary residence and you're renting out a spare room. That makes sense, or a guest house at your own property. That can make sense on Airbnb, but nothing else makes sense with these new Canada Revenue Agency restrictions. I am selling all properties that have any Airbnb related. If I do Airbnb, what I'm now doing is I have property management companies contacting me saying, hey, can we long-term rent the property from you? It's a single family residential property. We're going to rent it from you. And we're going to do whatever we're going to do with it. But all you need to know is we're going to rent it from you residentially. No problem. I rent it to them. I sign a 1-year lease. I'm all good. It's not a commercial property. They put it on Airbnb. They have an Airbnb active business, so they can deduct their expenses. They can throw it on Airbnb. It's an active management company. That's their business. They got to pay the rent either way. When you structure it in that way, the property does not become HST eligible on sale. That is the huge differentiator. Now they're talking about like even going after the re-rental guys. So they haven't yet gone after those guys who have businesses that rent properties and then re-rent them on Airbnb. I don't know if they will attack those. It seems like instead of creating supply and incentivizing landlords, the Liberal government in Canada is like, let's just destroy anyone who's trying to create any opportunity for themselves. And instead of creating supply, we're going to take in 1 million immigrants a year. We're not going to create enough housing supply. And then what we're going to fix that is we're going to tax the shit out of anyone who doesn't want to rent their property out or who wants to do short-term vacation rental. And that was driven largely by the large hotels lobbying the local government. You know, Liberals love handouts. I don't want to say that on film. I don't get in trouble, but like that's probably what's happening backdoor, right? And they've lobbied, and the hotel industry was getting destroyed by all these Airbnbs, because why wouldn't you Airbnb a place for $50 a night that has a kitchen, like in someone's full apartment, versus renting a hotel room from Marriott, right? Like it was eating their lunch. And so all the resorts, the campgrounds and the resorts were like, all these Airbnb cottages are destroying us. And so I'm sure that they got together and lobbied, at least in some part. The, I guess, narrative to the public was like, hey, we want to have more available residential housing. And in cottage country, everyone's buying up all the properties and they're Airbnb-ing them. And there's no local housing for the locals there. And it's like, well, why don't we just build housing? Why don't we incentivize builders and real estate investors like me? Give me a tax incentive. Make it easy for me. Say, hey, we'll allow you to get a permit approved in 5 days. And we'll have inspections 10 times a week. So you can build really quick. Instead, it takes a year to get a permit approved to build anything here in Ontario. You're going to send in your stuff to the city. There'll be 15 business days to respond. They're going to come up with a deficiency. Once they have a deficiency on the drawing, even if they didn't notice something on the drawing and they issue that as their deficiency, they do that a lot in a lot of local municipalities that I've been involved in. And then they kick the can down the road for 4 months of back and forth. The engineers are like, dude, this municipality sucks. Why don't they get faster? Like, there's so much the commentary that I'm getting from the engineers and the architects working with the city is that like the municipalities are understaffed, or I don't know if it's even understaffed. It's like they come in at 9:30 in the morning and they leave at 3:30 in the afternoon. And the private sector works 9 to 9 and weekends. And the public sector doesn't work that hard. Trudeau has grown the public sector double in his tenure. There are double the amount of staff working for the government of Canada than there were when he started his reign, I guess. So it's like 10 years ago or something. So that he's grown the public sector workforce double, and services have not improved. So we've got way more people shuffling papers and shit's not getting done. It would be nice if the government came in and said, hey, like in the war times, they built wartime homes. They're talking about bringing that back in Canada and Ontario. I've seen that in the news recently. That's a great measure. Let's get builders. Let's work with builders and say, hey, we're going to make it really easy for you. Right now, it's $100,000 in development fees to build a small single-family house. If they dropped those local municipality fees to $50,000, you don't think that people would build a lot more? Or if the municipality said, hey, we're not going to charge you anything. Like the government came in and said, we'll hire 5 full-time municipal staffers to do inspections on these builds, and we'll subsidize the builders. So you don't pay any permit fees. We'll let you build whatever you want. You pay for the build. We'll cover all the permit fees and we'll come in and inspect the project as it goes. If you did that incentive, we would build thousands of units in Canada. All you have to do is incentivize the guys who are ready to work. The problem is in this environment, interest rates are 8, 9%. They're trending down now, I guess 7%, let's call it, 6%. They're falling. But they could just as easily resurge. We get one bad inflation report and bond yields start ripping to the sky again. And all of a sudden we're in the same situation we were in 4 months ago. Anyway, to get to my point, it is most definitely not friendly for creating inventory here in Ontario and in Canada. And that is the problem. And they're attacking, like, I don't know why they're trying to solve the existing supply rather than creating new supply. Typical government. The problem is that most of the voters are NIMBYs, not in my backyards. Think of like your 70-year-old grandma who doesn't understand Airbnb at all, but she votes for all her local council people. And that 70-year-old grandma is going to show up to council and say, the Airbnb people partied all night and they did this and they did that and the property looks horrible and I wish it was all owner occupied. And those are the people who run the local governments because they're the ones who vote. Everyone else is busy working and doing shit. And the people who are retired with nothing better to do are calling in and complaining and not in my backyards. They create most of the housing crisis problem. They put up a lot of the red tape that makes it challenging for property investors to build inventory and solve a lot of the problems, right? Like we could add guest houses to every property everywhere. And they're starting to get on board with that. But up until like 2-3 years ago, you couldn't even build a guest house if you wanted to. If you had a 2-acre lot and you had a lot beside you that was merged with your parcel, you weren't allowed 2 units on any lot. It's like, or if you already had a duplex and you had a big area to build another guest house, you couldn't do that. They just said no. It's like, why would they limit the number of housing units when they have the availability on the land to do it? Anyway, it's silly. But red tape is another big piece. Wondering what is a tenant profile you'll get in such units, especially when you're 100 plus of them at the same property? Yeah, so you will, like, depending how you do your amenities, you will get a lower quality of tenant for sure. Is it necessary? Like a lot of these people in these extended stay motels that don't have kitchens, a lot of the clientele is really bummy. Like you're talking transitional housing, people who are just there for a construction job for like 2 months. You get a lot of that kind of transient type of person, or the type of person who doesn't have any furniture, who wants a fully furnished unit that's just like ready to go, nice and easy. That kind of person doesn't, if you only be there for a year, let's say, why would you lease an apartment and buy your own furniture? No, you want furnished, right? So there's a certain demographic you can target, and I could lay out all the different types of people that you would be targeting. But yeah, in general, someone who wants a micro apartment or lives in an extended stay hotel is a transient type of person. So be that what it will, it's part and parcel, right? And apartment buildings in general, like how many well-to-do people live in a 1-bedroom apartment? I mean, it's just most of the renting class that are renting those types of units are the bottom half of socioeconomic status, meaning they don't make a whole bunch of money. If they did, they would rent like a 5-bedroom house, right? Or like, why would you choose to live in an apartment when you could have more? Obviously, it's the nature of rentals for sure. David says, you mentioned you're working on a chat box containing all the info from your YouTube channel. Will that be coming out soon? So there is someone who's a follower of mine who is working on that. I don't know what his status is on that. I should follow up and find out if he's still working on that. It's a cool idea. I was testing it a little bit with him sending me some links and some videos. It was pretty cool. So that would be something that I would love to see come to fruition. I have so many things that are going on. That's something that generates no revenue, where I have like dozens of mortgage deals I'm trying to work through right now and property deals. And that stuff generates hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's hard for me to want to focus my attention on a cool pet project that generates no revenue. But I should take social media more seriously too, probably. How many mortgages can you have at once as a real estate investor? Well, I don't know what you're asking. So as a lender, I can have as many as I want. I can lend to whoever I want. There's no cap. As far as a borrower, a single property could have a first mortgage, a second mortgage, a third mortgage, and technically a fourth mortgage, and notice of interest on a property. So that's all possible. I've seen people have first, second, and third and fourth mortgages. The priority is the second or third mortgage holder gets nothing until the first and the second and all their fees are first satiated. So it's a very high risk place to be. It's better than unsecured lending. But yeah, like loan agreements to your friend, that's zero security. You have nothing you can take. But as far as securing as a real estate investor, I would say it goes like first mortgage, second mortgage, third mortgage, fourth mortgage, general corporate security. You lend to their corporation with a general GSA on the assets. Then there's like just typical like loan to their corp. Then there's loaning to them personally. Loaning to personal is actually more safe than the corporation because you can sue them personally. So I would say the personal loan to them is above lending to their corporation, which is the lowest amount of security. Unsecured prom note to their corporation is the worst possible. Next question was philosophy on parenting. Specifically related to what? What is my philosophy on what? For the most part, we are very much trying to give our kids independence to help them solve their own problems. So we try not to step in and baby them too much. But I honestly believe that like my job as a parent is to set boundaries and to be a role model and giving them the support that they need, giving them, the love and the attention and all the things that they need, the time and the energy is super important. But at the end of the day, like we are their mentor. They're my greatest mentees. And so, as they get older, it's really, really important that I incorporate them into the business, that I teach them what I do and what I understand, and all that's really important. Yeah. How many until you need to go to B lender? So if you're talking about like what kind of lenders, if you structure in a corporation, you can get 10 mortgages with Scotiabank. You can do 5 with CIBC in your personal name, 5 inside of a corporation. If you started in a corporation first, you can have no mortgages in your personal name and have a corporation with 5 properties in it and not disclose those properties because you own nothing personally. So you can say, hey, I'm going for my first mortgage personally to say Bank of Montreal, and they won't be able to see anything because all those other mortgages are inside of corporation. So each corporation holding 5 mortgages. I've seen people go the residential mortgage route and get 20, 30 mortgages. After that, you have to start going to alternative lenders who will then do 75% loan to value and that sort of thing. And then, if you buy commercial, you can get unlimited number of mortgages. There is no limit. You could buy 10,000 houses. There are lenders who will keep lending regardless of the number of units that you have. If you go the commercial route, you're going to pay a little bit more in interest going the commercial route, but you are not restricted to a certain number of residential mortgages. Lots of challenges. There are, of course, lots of challenges in everything that you do. There is nothing easy that you make money at. It will all have challenges. But are there solutions to all of those challenges, Yuri? Yes, there are definitely solutions to every challenge. In residential, it's a lot of really hard to convert, say, a triplex to a fourplex. In the commercial space, I found it's been easier to work with these things. But yeah, there's always challenges. Try to buy a property that already has your zoning in place, that you're not wildly changing the building. Adding a kitchenette is not a huge deal to a hotel room. But yes, there probably is some zoning in many situations that takes time and effort and energy. Don Trent says, popping on to see what's up. Hey, Don, how you doing? Will says, good evening, guys. Hey, how you doing? Paul says, hi, Mike. Could use RESP to buy a house in the future. How does that work? I thought RESPs were only for education. So RESPs are registered education savings plans, not residential. Registered education savings plans. They're designed for education, yes. So your kid would have to take some sort of educational program. Now, things like flight school for a year or like 1-year programs also open up the RESP, is my understanding. So I think by the time that my kids get there, mentorship programs and coaching programs and all that kind of stuff will also qualify for the RESP. I could be wrong. We'll see what the next decade and a half brings. But I do think that my kids will be in a position where they could take a 1-year program and use the RESP. Would I pay for their schooling and then take their RESP funds and buy a house? Probably. Or maybe they work the summer, save up some tuition, and they pay their own school, get a scholarship, do what I did, and earn their way through school. And we use the RESP to buy the house. But yeah, would I consider paying for their education and buying a house? I would consider that. Depending how, I want to reward my kids if they're working hard. If they're really smart and doing really well, I want to give. If they don't care and they're not motivated, why would I pay for school? If they're just going to throw the money away. So I think it's going to be situationally dependent on each child and what they need and how I can help them. It's always evolving and always changing, and I have to give great thought to how I would structure things. But yeah, what's a good way to get started? This person says in real estate. So, you're a computer science, so the key is just doing really well and finding good part-time jobs, start saving income. How do you start investing in real estate? Well, it could be as simple as like partnering up with someone. It could be as simple as, you could rent a property out. You can go rent a 5-bedroom house. If you're a student at Western, go rent a 5-bedroom house to learn real estate. You rent a 5-bedroom house for, say, if you go like south of Oxford down Western Road, you'll start finding some cheaper 5-bedroom properties. You might find something for like $3,000 a month. And you can take the smallest room for yourself and sublet 4 of the rooms out, put them on Kijiji Marketplace, rent those 4 bedrooms out and furnish them. Go buy a bed, buy a desk, set it up, and rent each room furnished out for, say, $750 a bedroom. And now you're bringing in $3,000 a month from those 4 rooms. You're living for free. You're now rent hacking. That's a form of investing in real estate. You're learning how to rent properties out. You're learning how to write leases and sublet agreements. You're understanding how real estate works. You're basically setting up a property. It's almost the same as if you own that property. When you rent that property and you pay all the expenses, it's a lot like you own the property, except that you don't own the property. But you could maybe work with your landlord to get a right to purchase in the future. They may even give you that. But just starting with rent hacking. And all of a sudden, now you're using the income from renting those other 4 rooms out to pay for your room entirely to live for free. Now you're living for free and going to school. I did that. So I know it's totally doable. Do you suggest to rent and do Airbnb or buy and do Airbnb? I would definitely say rent and do Airbnb for sure. T-Hack2 says, Happy New Year. Happy New Year. And the person says, Happy New Year, Mike. What are the pros and cons for Canadian who does 98% work online? Renting out units, blah, blah, blah. Buying a personal name. So to answer a couple of those questions and unpack that thing, I would say there's nothing wrong with working online. That's great. You save money commuting. It's the same as working anywhere else, though. It isn't necessarily, you work somewhere, you make an income. Working online is great. Nothing wrong with that. And buying property when you work online is the same. You would go to the lender with your pay stub. That shouldn't matter at all for buying real estate. Working from home is a fantastic thing because you save a lot. So you don't have to commute. You don't have to sit in the office. You save all that time. You save having to buy lunches and all that kind of stuff. So working from home is great. And then next thing you said was buying a 3-unit in Buffalo. Definitely a good idea. Should you buy an LLC or personal name? I think LLC is probably easier in the US, but in Canada, could make more sense to buy your personal name. Depends on your tax situation. So I can't say one is better than the other. It just depends. If you're in a high tax bracket and you're making $200,000 a year, putting it inside of a corporation probably makes a lot of sense. But if you're, in a situation where you make $30,000 a year, putting your personal name will give you potentially like your tax rate's lower because in your corporation, you're paying the maximum tax possible. Thoughts on switching careers in your late 20s? Do whatever you want through life, All right, we'll walk back up here, end the stream on a high upstairs. Definitely do whatever you love with your life. I mean, there's nothing wrong with switching careers. I've switched careers a bunch of times. I've gone from I was a financial planner for a while. I worked in tech consulting. I went to a business school. I worked for KPMG in accounting. I've jumped around. I've been a real estate agent. I've done mortgage broker business. I've chased, real estate flipping. I've done a little bit of development. I did a small subdivision of development. I've tried so many different areas and facets, and it's fun. I've tried to stay within the real estate house because I've got so much experience in it, but there's not necessarily one thing that's better than another. Look at this place, so cool. Those 40-foot ceilings, just unreal. Any high interest investment action tickers you recommend? I don't do any bond investing in the stock market because I have private placement. I know a lot of people who are looking to borrow, and those people who are looking to borrow will pay me 15, 16, 17, 18, 19% right now, secured against real estate at a low loan to value. So for me, it's just, how cool is this place? For me, it just comes down to I can find better private bond alternatives that are interest-bearing assets that pay me 15, 20% with very little risk. So yeah, I don't follow any of those, but hey, it looks like we're through all the questions. Look how sick this is. I just love this place. All right, guys, I'm gonna wrap up the stream. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Look at that vault. These are 40-foot ceilings. You can see these. Look how big this is. These are tree trunks, every one of them. They're like 2 feet wide, 30 foot high, maybe even higher than 30 feet. From the main floor, I would say it's 40 or 50 feet high.
Anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you for being here. I appreciate all you guys who come on and watch the replay. If you are watching, hit the like button, jump in the comments. Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome to 2024. We're going to hustle, we're going to crush, we're going to build, and we're going to have, I think, a lot of fun on the way. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you, of course, every week. You know where to find me every day at Mike Rosehart on Instagram and on Facebook. And, of course, every week, live, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube. So thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week, 7 to 8 p.m. And as always, the secret to unlocking a wealthier you is 3 levers and control your financial future. Spend less, earn more, and maximize returns in the difference. Bye, guys. Have a good night.